The Bible is wild. Whether you're a Christian or you're not a Christian, there are some stories in the Bible where you can't run away from the fact that you read them and think, wow, that's wild. Ladies and gents, welcome back to Offbeat POV with me, Chin, and my co-host, Pro Nick. And today, Pro Nick is going to run us through some wild stories in the Bible that he wants to share. Why? Who knows? He will let us know. So, we're going to jump straight in. We're not going to waste too much more of your time. But before the title clip, I just want to say, this is, of course, our big question segment. If you enjoy this and you want to hear a lot more from us, then we also have our In the World segment. And that's a segment in which we look at things that are happening out there in the world, on social media, on the interweb. And we use those as springboards for discussions that enrich our lives and hopefully your lives as Christians. Listen, if that sounds interesting, then definitely consider subscribing. But if you're just here for the wild stories, here's the title clip. Let's go.
All right, let's be fair, right? Here at Offbeat POV, we talk about a lot of deep issues, a lot of important stuff, right? And I think it's important from time to time to hit a pause button, you know, like do something light, for example, something for, you know, just for our listeners to enjoy pastime. And then, you know, next week we'll be back into the deep stuff. Or who knows, these could also be deep things. So like what Chin said, all we are doing today is going through some of the stories that I consider to be wild in the Bible. Now, make no mistake, I chose the least controversial stories to introduce to you people. If you are non-believers who like our conversations, this can be sort of like an introduction or just an awareness of the kind of stuff that are in the Bible, because the Bible is very, very vast. And if you are believers, you probably know of these stories. And if you didn't know them, I will encourage you to go and read them in their entirety and put them up in your community, churches, pastors, and try to pick out what God was trying to communicate. Because if they're in the Bible, it was not just for the bands. There's something that God wanted to communicate. We're not going to deliver that here now. Again, as I like saying, stay tuned for our Bible study series. This is more just to raise awareness, like I said, and just to see initial thoughts of what Chin and myself thought when we either first read these verses, passages, or stories, or after some time, if our minds changed about the experiences. Right? Understand the mission of today?
Yeah.
Excellent. So the first one comes from the book of Genesis chapter 38, right? Now, I read this story and I thought to myself, you know when you try to put yourself in a situation and you're like, I kind of understand what was going on here, right? Now, I'm just going to run through a few bullet points. I don't know how well you remember the story, but this is to do with Judah and Tamar, right? Now, I'm just going to give a summarization of the story. Judah had 3 children, right? So he found a wife for the first child, who was Now, first interesting thing, I thought to myself, the Bible says that was wicked in the sight of God and the Lord killed him. I was like, imagine if that was the God we were serving today. Like, it's in black and white like that, and the Lord killed him. Now, that was interesting because obviously nowadays people are so soft. It's like it's always about, if God is so loving, what about this, you know? And you are reading there, he was wicked in the eyes of God and the Lord killed him, right? Now, at the time, they were living under the law that stated if a brother passes away whilst they were married, the younger sibling was to take on the wife. But the complication of that was that the firstborn child was not going to be the second brother's, was going to be the brother that died. Obviously, lineage was a very important thing. Descendants were a very important thing. So that's what happened. And the second brother took the wife. His name was Onan. he didn't like the idea of the firstborn not being his seed. So the Bible actually says, and it's actually written in there, that every time he had intercourse with Tamar, he would pull out. I heard someone commenting a long time ago saying that the pull-out game was introduced a very long time ago. Wild. And obviously spill his semen on the floor and thus preventing Tamar from getting married, right? Again, God was displeased with this. Guess what God did? Killed him. Now, here is the second thing that I find a bit wild. Then there was the last born, Sheila or Shela. I don't know how they pronounce that name. And he must have been underage because the language was, Judah then said to Tamar that go back home, go be a widow. When he is of age, I'll come give him to him and you can wed him and he can be your husband. Now the Bible does also add saying that he said this because he was one, dead. 2, dead. I give him the third one as well. I give her the third one as well. He's going to die. So he was trying to escape that. Wild. I'm like, okay, what the heck is going on here? Now the cream of the cream, now to get your thoughts on the story, was the fact that time passed and Tamar is there minding her own business. Like, yo, where is this child at? Now, let me just pause there, right, for a second. If we were to do that today, okay, because maybe it's female and male, it wouldn't be shown, it wouldn't be looked down upon as much, right?
As opposed to what?
As in opposed, if it's reversed. If an older man is waiting for a young girl who is underage to reach underage. Do you remember there's a comedian that, I'm not going to go on a tangent, I promise. I think it's relevant. No, it's not. I just want to share it. There's a comedian that was making a joke about the privilege that women have. So he gave an example of a woman that saw a very young boy and just handsome. And she was like, oh my days, he's so handsome. Look at you. You're so cute. Oh my days. Oh, you're so gorgeous. Oh, and then he's like, oh, save him for me. When he grows up, I'm going to come back for him. And everyone was like, And then she was like, I dare any man here to go find a young girl and say, oh, you saw what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. Maybe because it was man and female, it's a little bit sort of like okay. So maybe people may not bat their eyes a little bit. I did, because I saw, someone like, I don't know, someone who is like 14 or 15, and then he has to wait until he's like 20, waiting for this woman who must be now like well in her 40s or something. Just like, yo,
what's wrong with that?
Everything is wrong with that. Like, she's past her heydays. Give the young boy something, new. I'm gonna sound so bad there. Like, yo, Andrew Tate is talking. But anyway, so that didn't happen. So she's sitting there waiting, thinking, what's going on? So she devised the plan. So Judah's wife then passed, and he was going to go see his friends and his sheep somewhere. Paraphrase. Like I said, the story comes from Genesis chapter 38. Please go read it if you're not familiar with it. So she made a plan. She, in my words, dressed as a prostitute and then sat somewhere. And as Judah was minding his own business, again, you can add this as someone who was loved by God. He was like, oof, I need some. So he saw her and thought she was a prostitute and then said to her, well, how much for me to sleep with you, basically. So anyway, he didn't have money at the time. So he gave her sort of like things that identified him at the time as a man, the signets and things like that. Details are in the Bible, Genesis chapter 38. And then he slept with her. And then time went, 3 months later, word came saying that, oh, she's now pregnant. And he wanted to be like, oh, she's been unjust. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. And then she was like, yes, I have been unjust. But the man that got me pregnant, he's the owner of these things. And then when Judah realized, I found this wild, he was like, oh, she's been more righteous than I have. Story continues. Now, if you continue the story, the even weirder thing is that the two twins were born there that continue the story of the Bible in a very interesting way. Perez and somebody, right? If you follow the story on. Reading this at a very young age, when we started to love the Bible, love God, and God is revealing things to us. I don't know about you, but I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, what? I'm thinking, what on earth as a side story, I can understand it. But as a main plot, because obviously Judah, that's the line of Judah there. You saw what I mean? Like, as a main plot, like,
canon.
Yeah, I'm just like, what is going on? You know, what were your initial thoughts when you read this story at the time, or rather, what are your thoughts of this story?
I mean, it's for me. I think it's a reminder that God works with our humanity, and I think a lot of this is cultural as well, because obviously the whole giving of the son's wife that died with no child given to the door, that was a cultural thing, not even like a Jewish culture thing. I think it was like that time culture thing.
I did read something that did say it was a Levitical practice, but not referring to Levi.
Right, okay.
But as a practice that was being practiced by all people at that time.
Yeah, because by Genesis, the Israel is not even...
It's nowhere in the picture.
I mean, it's in the loins. This is the start. This is the start. So I think it was a cultural thing. So yeah, for me, like you said, you read it and you think, but I think the good thing with us is that we always read it in context of what comes next. So it was never like the sole focus. It wasn't like, okay, let's just look at this really wild story. And like you said,
it was following the story and seeing where it led, and also learning lessons from there. Anything that you can pull out from there.
Exactly. But I mean, it's not that wild if you think about it, though.
It was for me. Why is it not that wild for you?
Because so you have a man who wants to have his own legacy as opposed to continuing his brother's legacy. That's what human pride, human legacy, the need for having your own lineage. That's normal. We can understand that. And then you have a woman who is following the laws of that time, who's being faithful in her duty as a woman. But then you have the father-in-law who, rightfully so, worried for his son, but then is swindling this woman out of what's rightfully hers, which is
the little boy. There you go. The little boy.
No,
swindling. She was being swindled from the little boy.
While he's a little boy. The point is she's being faithful in that he's saying, okay, fine, I will wait for him to grow up. And this is the thing. Why is that wild? Is it just me that doesn't think that's wild?
You as a parent, you're not going to be worried that all my days, my third born is going to die as well.
No. Listen. Judah did what made sense to him, right? So
do you agree with him or disagree with him? Because I can relate. I can relate.
That's a hard question. No? Do I agree with him or do I disagree with him? I can relate with him, but the fact of the matter is what he was doing was wrong according to the laws that they had at that time. So whereas, and it's the same thing where I can understand Onan's motivations, but the fact is what he was doing was wrong. So me relating, me understanding, doesn't mean I then be like, oh, okay, I can still understand and relate, but I think this is what Christian is about, isn't it? It's about meeting us as humans and saying, okay, look, we know you have you have the heart for vengeance. We know that if someone wrongs you, your blood is boiling, you want vengeance, but no, vengeance is mine, right? And so it's for us to follow that. If a Christian took vengeance on someone, would I understand? Yes, 100%. We've sat here multiple times and I've told you about how I would plan my vengeance meticulously to make sure they suffer the most.
I like how you managed to find yourself back there. Just so you can be like, yeah, watch out. Well,
so yes, can I understand the heart of vengeance? Yes. But at the end of the day, if we say we believe what we believe, should I step back and be like, yeah, but it was still messed up. It was still wrong what they did. Yeah. And this story is only messy because of the people. If you know, it's only messy because of the people that weren't willing to do what they were meant to do. Onan studied it, and then Judah followed, and Tamar's actions were she was smart, to be honest with you. She was very shrewd.
Yeah.
She was very shrewd in her actions. So
she must have been desperate. That's another wild thing though, because another woman, I don't know.
But then the thing is, I mean,
because God, I don't want to go too deep, but then it's like it had to be her and Judah.
Of course, but then the thing is, I don't know if the laws at that time would have allowed her to go off and marry someone else. Anyway,
no, I don't think they would have.
I'm not very well versed in that.
I think wouldn't the normal thing have been to be like, yo, I've seen your boys of age now. What's going on? Why did she have to go and then sleep with father-in-law, basically. She slept with her father-in-law.
Yeah, wasn't it Judah that was?
She slept with her father-in-law, and it was pronounced as righteous by Judah. She's been more righteous than me.
Yeah, because she was being shrewd. Because she was right in the wrong. Listen, there's a lot of kosher things happening here. I haven't got all the answers. All I know is that
it's wild.
It's you can find it's wild. If that's what you want,
all right, fine. I thought that was gonna be a dad. Okay, so let me move on to my next one. Right. To be fair with you, there are a lot that I could have picked. But like I said, I wanted this to be a light-hearted conversation for a change. So let's go to the next one, which is Numbers chapter 22. Yeah, that one is from verse 22. Again, I know you are acquainted with it, but for the sake of you listeners, this is regarding Balaam and Balak and the donkey and the angel of the Lord. So basically what happened was that the children of Israel, when they left Egypt, there was a certain king that called Balaam to come and curse them. But the Lord spoke to Balaam and said that don't go curse those people. They're blessed people, right? And then the people came to Balaam and he refused, and then they came a second time, and then he said, okay, fine, wait here, let me see what God says. And then God says, okay, fine, you may go. But then God was angry with Balaam that he had gone, right? So on his way there, the donkey that he was riding saw an angel, right, blocking the way. And the donkey turned the other way into the vineyards. And Balaam hit the donkey. What's going on, my friend? So as we was walking in the vineyard, the angel was there again, and the donkey turned another direction, to the point where he ended up in a place where there was nowhere to turn because it was in between two walls, and the donkey slammed Balaam into the wall, and Balaam was angry and upset. Now, I want to read this because this is the wild bit about it, okay? We have no record ever since the serpent in the Garden of Eden, who we understand that is the devil or was meant to personify the devil, basically. So it was not the animal the animal snake that God had created, unless if snakes were devils before they became snakes. Anyway, but that's what we understand. We have no record of animals ever talking, and to this day, actually. And that's why this made it to my wild stories of the Bible. And I want to read exactly what the donkey said because I felt for the donkey. I'm not going to lie to you, right? So I think that's verse 28. Verse 28, right? So now Balaam is beating this donkey left, right, and center, and the donkey. So the Bible says, verse 28, and the Lord opened the mouth of the ass. And okay, by the way, I'm reading from King James Version. I didn't decide just to drop the word ass in there.
I think you don't have to put that.
I had to. We have all sorts of people listening. So 28 said that, and the Lord opened the mouth of the ass, and she said unto Balaam, what have I done unto thee? Thou hast smitten me these 3 times. And Balaam said unto the ass, because thou hast mocked me, I would there were a sword in what? I would there were a sword in mine hand, for now would I kill thee. So here's the thing.
Did you say what when reading the verse?
I forgot the version that I was reading. It was not making sense.
He doesn't do that to you. Have you seen that clip of the preacher preaching and he puts a verse up in King James and he's like, and then it was guys, can we change the version, please? In the middle of a sermon,
Literally, that's what I just experienced. What?
No.
So here's the thing.
King James humbles people.
The donkey talks. And I'm thinking, the first thing that's happening there, I'm jumping off that donkey and thinking to myself, what? You talk?
The wildest story about this, the wildest thing about this story is Balaam's response.
Exactly.
Because, bruh, you've never heard a donkey talk before. How are you responding to it as if it's a normal conversation?
Yeah, look what you've done. Is my G gonna talk to this donkey like everything is okay, like nothing is wrong, like this is what we do on a day?
Yeah, that's wild.
But anyway, so they have a conversation, said, okay, fine. And And I wish there was a sword in normal English, for I would have actually killed you. Verse 30. And the ass said unto Balaam, am I not thine ass, upon which thou hast ridden ever since I was thine unto this day? Like, can you not feel the emotion?
Is it my habit to treat you this way?
Literally. I know, this is absolutely crazy. Right? And then it's like, was I ever wont to do so unto thee? And he said, nay. He's actually answering, no, you haven't.
Yeah.
Then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way, and his sword drawn in his hand, and he bowed down his head and fell to his face. Right? The only ever recorded time where we had an animal talking, conversing with a human being. Wow. Now, tell me that's not a wild story. And it pleaded for its life. It's like, yo, my G. It made me think, actually, about, you know, nowadays we have dogs. I was watching a clip.
That's literally where my mind went as well.
Yeah, I was watching a clip. A few clips that are in my mind. I'll mention them more quickly, too, actually, so I don't go on a tangent. One, there's been these clips that I've been watching where they'll give dogs food and then they'll pretend as if someone has broken in to see the dog's reaction. Right, and every clip I've watched so far, the dog is literally eating food and looking at the owner being beaten. Like, yo, there's food in front of me. So there's things like that. I watched one recently where, you know, and the owner was actually having a conversation with the dog, trying to like, yo, we see so many cute things. I'm actually been converted to the fact that, yes, dogs are a man's best friend, because there's just a certain relationship that they have with humans that is just out of this world, in my opinion, right? Now imagine one day a dog turns around and be like, yo, have I not known you since I was a pup? Have I not been your dog since I was a pup? Have I ever in any way mistreated you? Have I ever beaten you out of nowhere? Like, just out of nowhere, I've beaten you? That's literally how I was translating this. But even then, that's breaking the internet. That is breaking the internet.
Well, I mean, listen, I don't know what was happening with Balaam, but I guess maybe it could also be, you know when you're angry and you just see red.
So he was not in his right mind.
And literally anger was just speaking in that moment. Like, you're going to comprehend that my donkey is
He's talking to me.
You're just like, you know, but you're yeah, no, but it's I mean, you're thinking of dogs, and yeah, dogs are a great example. But I'm just thinking of animals in general. Obviously, this was a donkey, and I think humans have an uncanny ability to form deep relationships with animals. You know, it could be donkey, it could be horses, it could be, you know, obviously dogs, cats, or whatever. I think
cows,
cows. I think humans do have a really unique
100%.
thing where you can actually bond with animals and you can actually, to the point where if they did speak, it would be like, oh wow, you're speaking, but as in it would be strange that they're speaking because animals don't speak, but it would almost be like,
oh, clearly they do, the donkey spoke,
but it would almost be like, well, we communicate anyway. Does that make sense? Like you communicate.
It's just an added
it's just
layer
like now to verbal communication. But it's like, and maybe that's what was happening with Balaam. I mean, like the donkey said, they've been together for a long time. So maybe he was very familiar with the donkey to the point that when the donkey spoke, maybe he just thought it was like their cosmic connection. Yeah, and you know, he just didn't see it. Maybe, I don't know. But definitely, I think humans do have an uncanny ability to bond with animals. Balaam was, that is a wild story. That one is a wild story. But I think the wildest bit about it is Balaam not being like, yo, you can talk. And just carrying on his train of,
I don't know.
Just carrying on his train of, yes, because you're not listening to what I'm doing. It's like,
have I ever done this? No, you haven't.
Nah, that's wild. That's wild.
The next one is not very long. And I think this one would cause the most controversial sort of like thoughts, especially brought to today. Right? This is coming from 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 23. It is the story of Elisha shortly after he had received the spirit, double portion, remember he asked for, from Elijah. The man was bored. He had no hair. So he was walking, going somewhere, came across a camp of children. And I don't know why. And do you know, the first wild thing about this story is that, unless if I'm mistaken, there's no reference of it anywhere else in the Bible. It's but 2 verses. And it's like, why did it didn't need to be. I'm saying it didn't need to be there, but it's one of them ones where, aside from the fact that, okay, fine, he was flexing with the Holy Spirit, or maybe there's a warning there, do not mock people of God, there's actually nothing else you can take from that. So for those of you that are not familiar with the story, the children started mocking Elisha by calling him Baldy, Baldy. They were singing, chanting, Baldy, Baldy, Baldy. The second wild thing, apart from the story itself existing in the Bible, is the fact that 42 children. It says that 2 she bears came out of nowhere or out of the wood and mauled 42 children. Ain't no way you're convincing an atheist that our God is a loving God with this story. There's no way. How are you gonna spin that? It's 42 children. Never mind the adults he killed because they were wicked in inside. Now there are 42 children who we can argue did not know better, because in today's world, we are trying to argue that children don't know better.
No. Yeah, that's what we're trying to argue. But remember, that's the thing that I always argue against.
You can't argue against it fully, yes, because at the same time, a child gets enticed to go, I don't know, out clubbing, and then they end up getting molested or something like that. You are gonna sit there and say that, actually, no, this was a child. They were not of the right mind to make certain decisions. So grooming is a thing. Do you not believe in grooming? I don't want to go on a tangent, but you've got to believe in grooming. Their minds are young, and okay, it depends on the child. I can accept that argument, but as a general rule of thumb, children are there to be protected. Children are there to be looked after. Children are there. They cannot make their own decisions.
Are there to be protected.
Now we have those children that should be protected for the 2 of them eaten by bears.
I think my biggest thing that I push back against is the age at which we think children are responsible or should be responsible for things. Because right now, I mean, in the UK, we'll say, usually 16 upwards. Then we can be like, oh no, you're an adult, you're gonna be an adult, you should be doing better or whatever. In other places it's 18, in other places it's 21. That's great, fine, your countries do your own laws, but I think it's much lower than that. I honestly think a child is a full-fledged human who has the capability to know right from wrong at maybe 8, 9.
Yeah, but knowing right and wrong is, I would argue,
at a push.
I would argue knowing right and wrong is still different to them being capable of making certain decisions.
No.
You need to have a certain understanding of the world to be held responsible for your actions as a human being.
So you're talking about parenting now, right? You're talking about what influences do they have in their lives? How are they being taught and groomed? Because grooming is an act. You can, okay, I know it has negative connotations, but yeah.
We have seen children in our family, cousins, grow up from that age, and I'm thinking about them now. One of them is still 9, 11, and I'm looking at her in my head, and I'm saying, ain't no way she's
what?
Okay,
doesn't know right from wrong.
No.
She knows what she should do.
She knows right from wrong. But something happens, and let's say a guy touches her.
Why are you going in that arena? No, because we're talking about something that's happened externally. I'm talking about the children's actions themselves. I'm not talking about something that happens to them.
Fair enough, I accept that, but we are discussing attributing responsibility to that young person. So if you are doing that, unless if you are going to select what you can attribute responsibility for, so unless if your argument is, okay, there are certain things they can't be responsible, we can't say they knew what they were doing.
If an 8-year-old steals, they know that stealing is wrong. Nine times out of 10, all 8-year-olds know stealing is wrong. Okay. In fact, people know stealing is wrong at a much younger age than that. But I'm being fair. Yeah, I'm being fair. If an 8-year-old steals, they know stealing is wrong. If an 8-year-old insults their friend, they know that's wrong. Okay. They know exactly what they're doing.
If an 8-year-old enters a sexual relationship with a 12-year-old, Do they know what they're doing?
Okay. Why are you giving that example? Maybe I need to understand because I don't think that's the same arena that we're discussing.
So we're going off on a tangent. We're not talking about this. I'm gonna put a cap on this. I'm gonna put a cap on this. Because we'll go too far.
Let's finish the thought first because I need to know why you're using that as an example to make your point.
Okay, so I'm using that as an example to make my point because the reason why I jumped to the way the world is today is because we're talking about, for example, was it Australia? You're telling me that they've banned under 18 to be on 16 to be used in social media, for example. Why? Because they've seen that there are dangers in the social media that they themselves cannot navigate, and they need, the power is being taken away from their hands. You have no choice. You haven't got the capacity to discern or decide. So we're doing that for you. Yeah, they're doing that for them because they are children, so they can't make that. So if you want, I can leave the sexual thing aside. I was going to that because again, that's one of the biggest concerns as well that this society faces. Youngsters being groomed into relationships by often older people. And then, for example, Akon's story, someone is in a club that's 20 and over, they are much younger, and he's getting in trouble because he had a relation with this particular person. No one is thinking, well, she was at fault because she went there. They should have been, but no one is thinking, and that's the word right now.
But that's what I would push against.
It's acceptable to think that the child did not comprehend the consequences of their actions by doing what they were doing.
What do you say?
It's acceptable. I would say it's acceptable that the child did not comprehend the consequences of their action. Essentially, sometimes we step in, again, back to this social media thing. These people, we can argue that the children are not comprehending the consequences of too much social media usage and accessing things that they shouldn't access on their minds.
Okay.
We are putting in a measure to protect them.
Do you want me to tell you why I disagree with what you're saying? Because you've spoken about two different things that for me are two completely polar opposites, right?
Okay.
The young girl who's underage, who goes into an over 18 or over 21 club, she knows that what she's doing is wrong.
She does.
So she's making the decision to do something wrong, right?
Yes.
And
but does she know what will happen? What could potentially happen?
Nobody knows the future. Nobody knows what's going to happen. And we as children, you know me. I'm okay with children in fact, not okay. I encourage children to be out in the world, taking risks, pushing boundaries, because that's how we learn. That's how we push, humans, forward, right? So I'm okay with that. But the fact of the matter is, if you push a limit, if you push a boundary, nobody knows what's going to happen. But there's certain rules and boundaries and limits for a reason, right? So that child going into the club that they're not old enough to go in, they've made that decision. Their responsibility lies on them. That's different to social media, because when social media came, only a few voices like me were saying, guys, this is terrible. This is not good. But it wasn't illegal. No, it was accepted. Socially, it was accepted. There was nothing wrong with it. So my point is, children partaking in that, they weren't doing anything that they knew was wrong and breaking the rules. They were just enjoying this new thing that's come on the surface.
So why not just say, okay, stop using social media?
What do you mean?
Why not just tell the children to stop using social media?
And this is a conversation that's being had, because, and I would agree with this, it shouldn't be a law. This is down to parenting. It's only a law because, again, another thing I would say, parenting is trash these days. Parents don't parent anymore. But it shouldn't be a law. You as a parent, your child is spending 14 hours on social media. Do you not have the brain cells to be like, no social media, maybe an hour a day? The rest of the time, you're there with the family, playing games with us, eating, doing homework or whatever. But parents are not doing that. As a result, it's having an impact on the schools. As a result, it's having an impact on society. As a result, government are like, okay, this is a problem now. We need to step in. But I would agree with you. It's not the government. It's not a solution for the government to find. It's an in-home thing.
I mean, a lot of pushback on that, but I do want us to stay on topic. Yeah, I do want us to stay on topic. So we will come back to this, and we will come back to this conversation in our future conversation. I've said this quite a lot today. I'm promising quite a lot of conversations. But anyway, even more so reason for you to stick around and subscribe. Anyway, back to this wild story. For 2 children died instantly by being mauled to death by bears.
Yeah, don't insult the chosen of God, I guess.
They had an opinion, and the opinion was that this man is bold.
It wasn't an opinion,
and they just decided to chant it.
They were insulting him, and I think the reason we started speaking about children is because I guess you were saying atheists or people who are trying to argue the point could say, oh no, but they didn't know better. I don't know.
Or even if they did know better, shouldn't we justify that because they are children?
Why?
Because they are children.
What does that mean?
Okay, fine. It's okay. It seems like I'm triggering Gina.
No. You're just opening up lines of conversation. So I'm trying to say, okay, fine.
Let's move on to the last one. Let's move on to the last one. All right.
But yeah, it's like you said, it's what 3 verses or so, and we don't get much more.
We don't get much.
So the opinions you have are purely based on what they are. And for me, what I see are small boys who are intentionally knowing exactly what they're doing, insulting the man of God.
Now, insulting a man.
Fair enough. This is a again, this is one of those moments I'll say it's how I understand it. I wouldn't preach it because I have no evidence, but I believe they knew who they were insulting, and I believe they knew why they were insulting him. But no. It's neither here nor there. Because imagine Elisha got a double portion from Elijah, but he wasn't born that day. So everybody knew who Elisha and Elijah was because Elisha was Elijah's sidekick. So and if you remember Elijah's exploits, they weren't like John the Baptist who was in the wilderness.
Children.
Yeah. Listen, anyway, that's fine.
Last one.
You, like a lot of people, as soon as the child is involved, they think no wrong can be done. I view it differently.
No. A lot of wrong can be done, and there's a lot of wickedness in children, and I think that's part of being a child. You're meant to be molded. The Bible says, train up a child in the way of the Lord, and they shall not depart. You're meant to be mischievous, adventurous, maybe a bit cheeky, but if you go into wicked stage, that's too far. Yeah, that's not a human condition. That's just a wicked condition. The last one has been a personal favorite of mine for a very, very, very long time. One of my personal favorites, I should say. Weird story. Very weird story. So there was a man, he was a Levite, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And he had a concubine. And she decided she wanted to go back home. So she left and went all the way back home. He must have loved her very well. Again, this is coming from Judges chapter 19. So do read the experience yourselves to get the actual facts of the story. So he went to fetch her. Got there, spoke to the father, and so on and so forth. They set off on the donkey, making their way back home. After traveling for some time, it got dark and they arrived at a certain city and they were going to stay in the town. But as per usual, quite similar to Sodom and Gomorrah, a man came out saying, no. You're not going to stay. You can't stay out here. Stay in my house. He said, okay, fine. First wild point. I mean, concubines were a normal thing, so that's not a wild point. Then the first wild point is the Bible says that the men of the city came to the house. And just like Sodom and Gomorrah, they were like, bring that man out. We want to have sexual relations with him. Right? And just like Sodom and Gomorrah, the house owner refused. Second wild thing. I mean, the first one is a minor wild thing because it happened before. Again, these are stories that are not well known. So it's not Sodom and Gomorrah, but it's similar. So the man, the owner of the house said, no, you can't do that. Don't do this, man. Please do not do that. And then he said, look, I have my daughter, my concubine, my housemaid, and his concubine, if I'm not mistaken. Take them and do whatever you want with them. But this man do not touch. I thought to myself, let these feminists read this. They are going to blow their minds off. She's not an object. Hey, what do you mean? Because it was literally do whatever you want to with them, you know, be your heart's content. I think it actually says as much to whatever you wish. you know, again, similar to Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm thinking, wow, wowzers, someone getting hold of this and knowing these passages, they'll be like, this is the God that you worship.
Well, no, because it's not God doing this.
Yeah, but it is in the Bible. This is the Bible that you read.
I mean, they could say that, but
and it was to protect this man of God.
Yeah. It's an easy thing to pick apart. But
okay, fine, fair enough. You're gonna pick it apart for me.
Well, I mean,
they did not want that, so they're arguing, and again, you have to read it for yourself. But it seems like the guest then just sort of like gave them his concubine, and they took her and they slept with her and did whatever they wanted with her until dawn. It actually says until morning, so all night until morning, and then they let her go. And she crawled her way back and got to the door, and her hand touched the threshold of the door. Very sad. Very sad. Very emotional, you know. Now, that's not really the wild thing about this story thus far, because like I said, so far it's more or less similar to Sodom and Gomorrah, although this didn't happen in Sodom and Gomorrah, so this is an extra thing. So the man opened the door, saw the concubine there, then he was like, get up, let's go. Yo, come on, let's go. And I thought to myself, woof, he was still going to take her home? Wow, okay. And he's like, let's go, let's go.
To what? Leave her there?
I don't know. Let's go. Nothing. So he took her, saddled her on her donkey, on his donkey, and they went and they got home. This is the wild part of the story. When he got home, he chopped her off in 12 pieces and sent every single piece to every single tribe of Israel. And then the story continues from there. Spoiler alert, they attacked that tribe that did that, I think, if I remember correctly, serves me right. That shouldn't be in the Bible.
Why not?
That commits so many levels of wrong. How are you going to be chopping a dead body up in 12 pieces? Now, why not just write a letter saying that I went to visit this, I was coming back from this place and I was doing this, and then, you know, this happened, and unfortunately this has happened. I'm so angry. Let's do something about it. Why chop off in pieces? This is like Game of Thrones kind of stuff, where people send heads to certain people, and you know, Vikings and I don't know, Tudor times or King Henry times, where people are actually chopping people in pieces.
It's the same reason Mike Todd uses props and stuff on stage instead of just speaking. Impact. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to.
You're gonna bring it down to impact.
That's. Listen.
This is such a traumatizing story. This is such an emotional story. This is such a heartbreaking story.
And on the back of that, you ride the impact and you use this heartbreaking story to make even a much bigger impact. And like you said, as a result, Israel went to war against the tribe of Benjamin because of it. Well, yeah, it's impact.
So God wanted Israel to go to war with the tribe of Benjamin and used, I mean, again, that's going into details that we don't know, but is it... Okay, so let me ask you this then in finishing. So why would God allow such a thing to happen? Because these are the questions that I say we, but Christians could be facing.
I don't know.
Because there are so many people that will read the Bible not with the intentions of understanding, or learning, but with the intentions of, I want to know what's in there. Then that's the kind of stuff that they bring up and be like, well, why would your God that is so loving, you say this God is a loving God, why would he allow such a situation to take place?
And I think I've already mentioned that my response to anyone who reads the Bible or comes at it from an attacking or antagonizing way, I have no time for, right? Because you're going to waste my time, I'm going to waste your time, because we're not going to see eye to eye, right?
Wouldn't one argue that that's the reason why Paul lived like a heathen and like Jews to win people over? Shouldn't you meet people where they are, as people like to say?
No.
If someone is coming antagonizing or challenging or that could develop into that could develop so shouldn't we as Christians,
if it comes to me,
allow that?
I will address it. But my point is, I'm not going out of my way to look for it, to find it or address it or anything like that, because Nine times out of 10, you never get anywhere because everybody's coming with their minds made up already. But to answer your question, why would God allow it? I don't know. His honest answer. Now, I can answer it more comprehensively if you understand who God is, what He's doing, and the people that He was working with, the Israelites. It's an easy answer. I can give you that answer. It stems back to the nature of man, right? But is that going to answer your specific question? Why would God allow this? Probably not. But if you give me the time and if you're willing to listen, I'll explain to you why this
had to take place.
Not had to take place, but why this doesn't put a dent on God's name. Does that make sense? But like you said yourself, well, no, I said, but you said, oh, this is why is God doing this? God hasn't done anything in this.
Allowing. Why is God allowing?
Yeah. You go about that, allowing, fine. But you see that these are man actions. So everything that's happened is the people who are perpetrating that, which is what happens in the world, right? What's happening in Gaza is men killing men and children and babies or whatever. It's same with Russia, same with America, whatever. So people do things. If you're asking me why does God allow people to do things, that's a very big conversation that we need to have. And you have two options there. It's either option one, you want God to just make everybody robots and do what He wants all the time and there's no issues in the world, in which case you can be like, oh, whoa, how can we worship a God who's making us robots? Or you want to have free will, in which case you open the door to people abusing that free will and doing this kind of stuff. So tell me, which one do you want?
What about on the aspect of morality? Can we not use this to question the morality of God? Because what kind of God
does God justify this?
I can't remember how the story ends.
So no, you can't use this to question the morality of God, because in the story that we're given, there is nothing to suggest that God didn't instruct anything. It's different to like the one that they like to quote for Canaanites. Oh, he commanded everybody to be slaughtered, even the children or the women or whatever. How can God do that? That one, fine, we'll have the conversation there, no problem. But in here, no, I don't think that's fair, because here we're given an experience that happened. It's the same way, like if you had to tell the story of, I'm trying to think of a very heinous crime. John Bundy. Is it John Bundy? What's Bundy's name? Bundy. You know Bundy? People who know Bundy. He's a serial killer, a famous serial killer. He's the one that actually helped the FBI write the book on psychological killers and fears and stuff like that. He was a very smart man. He was a serial killer. And when he got arrested into prison, he actually helped the FBI write the book on serial killers and stuff like that. His story is fascinating. But anyway, Ted Bundy, that's the one, yeah. So that's like us asking the question, why did Ted Bundy exist? It's a much bigger question than just picking out a story and trying to pinpoint.
Pick holes in it.
Pick holes in it. But is it a wild story? Yes, it's a wild story. I mean, you said it's one of your favorites. Why is it one of your favorites?
Because it's one of them ones where if you don't read properly and if you don't have the right understanding of the bigger plan, like what you're saying, if you're gonna question why did Ted have to survive, it's one that could mislead you. It's one that could complicate things that should be not simple per se, but it could provide a lot of unnecessary complications. Simply because, like I said, I'm approaching these stories from perspective of skeptical, let's say, for example, non-believers, people that are already coming in with the mentality of wanting to prove or find fault, and now this is a book that we pray by, swear by. This is a book that we say is the word of God. Now granted, not everything, but Timothy does say that everything is in there for edification. And in this special book, we have such stories, for example, so one can question, well, why is it in the first place? What purpose is it serving? And if it is serving a purpose, how could God allow something like that to happen in the first place? That kind of thing. So that's why it's one of my favorites, because it's something that.
So what are your responses to those questions?
I mean, the biggest answer you've already given, in the sense that it's a much bigger story than meets the eye. So what I'm saying to that person is that if you really want to have this conversation, I'm going to turn the care on. I'm going to turn the care on. Let's have a conversation. But there we go. Offbeat POV. That concludes our episode for this week. Like I said, this week was just to sort of like highlight a few weird, wild stories in the Bible. there are a lot. There are a lot of stories, some not so wild, but very supernatural. For example, water coming out of the desert. Everybody knows Moses and the Red Sea. Everybody knows Jesus walking on the Red Sea. On the sea. Avoiding the New Testament per se, focusing on the Old Testament especially, there's a lot that happened. We haven't even touched any of the plagues that happened in Egypt. Imagine waking up and everywhere there are frogs. Everywhere there are frogs. I don't know why Moses came to my mind. I think it was in the same line of looking at wild stories. When I'm like, for a mother to go put your child on the river like that, or on a sea in a basket and just hope for the best, that is also wild.
If that counts as wild, then you enter a territory where every story in the Bible is going to become wild.
Some are logical. Some you can be like,
the ones you pulled out today, definitely, they're definitely crossing the wild section.
Fair enough. Well, I'm glad I at least succeeded in the ones. But so again, it's just to. We on this podcast strongly believe that the Bible is to be understood as a whole. Simply put, there's a beginning point, a middle point, and an ending point. There's a story that is flowing from beginning to end. And yes, there will be stories here and there that perhaps may not play a big role in the story of salvation per se, but even in their small little, accounts do hold certain truths or certain nuggets of knowledge. Everything definitely is for our edification. There's definitely something to learn from it. Some of these wild stories that we pointed out today, Judah and Tamar and this particular story, are sort of like part of a bigger story. So when you read them entirely, you can see what God was doing from A to B. Tamar and Judah being a prime example of that, because as we know, that's where now Abraham came from, formerly known as Abraham, and then Jacob and Esau, 12 tribes of Israel, that kind of thing. So it serves purpose to know them. If you didn't know of the 4 that we've looked at today, I will implore you, go and read them, go and enjoy them. But if you find them to be confusing, don't worry, your salvation is still intact, because it's about the gospel. And the gospel, simply put, God sent his son to come and die for us on the cross, that by his blood we should be redeemed and connected to God. I don't know what happened there. But that's all we had for you today on Offbeat POV. So join us again next week as we tackle another big question. We're going to go back to the heavier stuff. I hope you enjoyed this week's light conversation, if even it was light at that. And we'll see you again next week. Until then, stay offbeat.
Confabulate.